Somewhere between fact, folklore, and late night speculation, there are stories that refuse to disappear, signals hidden in the noise, legends whispered in the dark, and mysteries that somehow feel stranger than they very big. Welcome to Dead Signal Podcast. Strange stories from the edge of static. Alright, tonight we're talking about one of the creepiest radio mysteries ever recorded. Number stations. And if you've never heard of number stations before, the basic idea sounds almost too strange to be real. Imagine it's late at night. You're alone. Maybe you're messing around with an old shortwave radio, turning the dial slowly through the static. Most of what you hear is noise, hissing, popping, distant voices fading in and out. Then suddenly, through all that static, you hear music. Maybe it's some old folk tune. Maybe it's a short little melody that sounds like something from a child's music box. But then the music stops. There's a pause. And a calm voice begins reading numbers. 5 at a time. No emotion. No explanation. Just 0, 2, 5, 8, 8. And then another group. Then another. Then another. And after several minutes, the voice simply stops. The signal disappears. And you're left sitting there in the dark wondering what exactly you just heard. That is the world of number stations. And the creepiest part? These weren't just ghost stories. These broadcasts were real. Some of them may still be happening. So before we get too deep into the rabbit hole, let's answer the obvious question. What exactly is a number station? A number station is a radio station usually broadcasting on shortwave that transmits coded messages made up of numbers, letters, tones, music, or sometimes digital sounds. Most people believe these stations were used by intelligence agencies to send messages to spies in the field. And honestly, that explanation sounds wild until you stop and think about it. If you're a spy operating in another country, you need instructions. And you can't exactly have your boss from headquarters call and say, "Hey, Gary, quick espionage update." That would be frowned upon. Probably by several governments. So instead, you use something simple, something ordinary, something almost impossible to trace back to you. A shortwave radio. Shortwave radio signals can travel enormous distances. Under the right conditions, they bounce off layers of the atmosphere and can be heard across countries, oceans, and even continents. That means a transmitter in one part of the world can send a signal that someone thousands of miles away can receive with a basic radio. No internet, no satellite phone, no email, no app, no login, no suspicious device, just a radio. And that's what makes number stations so unsettling. They're not hidden in some underground bunker that nobody can access. They're hiding in public, broadcasting into the open air. Anyone with the right equipment can hear them, but almost nobody can understand them. Now, the classic theory is that the spy receiving the message would already know when to listen and which frequency to tune into. They'd sit down at the right time, tune the radio, write down the numbers, and then decode them using something called a one-time pad. A one-time pad is basically a secret key used to turn random-looking numbers into a readable message. When used correctly, it's considered extremely secure. The sender and receiver both have matching copies of the key. The station broadcasts the coded numbers. The spy writes them down, and then the spy uses the key to decode the message. And once that key is used, it gets destroyed. That's the idea anyway. Simple, brilliant, and very, very creepy. Because from the outside, the broadcast sounds meaningless. Just a voice reading numbers into the void. But to the right person, it could mean move to safe house, destroy documents, meet contact tomorrow, abort mission, or something much more serious. We don't know, and that's the whole point. One of the most famous number stations was called the Lincolnshire Poacher. And if you want to hear it later, search for Lincolnshire Poacher number stations online, on YouTube, somewhere like that. Preferably not alone at 2 a.m. Or do, I'm not your supervisor. The Lincolnshire Poacher got its nickname because each broadcast began with the first bars of an old English folk song called the Lincolnshire Poacher. So listeners would hear this cheerful little melody repeating over and over. Then a woman's voice would begin reading groups of 5 numbers. The contrast is what makes it creepy. It doesn't sound like horror music. It doesn't sound like a monster. It sounds polite, calm, organized, and completely wrong. Like something official that wandered into the uncanny valley. The station is believed to have operated for decades, possibly from the mid-1970s until around 2008. Radio enthusiasts and investigators associated it with the British intelligence, and some direction-finding efforts pointed toward RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. Now, to be clear, governments generally don't come out and say, yes, that strange coded radio station was ours. That would defeat the purpose. So a lot of this world lives in that gray area between documentation, monitoring, intelligence history, and official silence. But the Lincolnshire Poacher is one of the clearest examples of the classic number station format. Repeating musical identifier, a calm voice, 5-digit number groups, a strict schedule, and absolutely no public explanation. And that's something I want to emphasize early in this show. With topics like this, there's usually a rational explanation, but rational doesn't always mean comforting. The rational explanation for number stations is not that ghosts are reading lottery numbers across the atmosphere. The rational explanation is that governments may have been broadcasting secret instructions to spies through ordinary radios for decades. Which is, frankly, not less weird, just weird in a necktie. Another famous example is Swedish Rhapsody. This one is often remembered because of how disturbing it sounds. Despite the name, Swedish Rhapsody was a German language station, and it became known for what many listeners described as a childlike voice. The broadcast would begin with a music box-like tune, then a strange little voice would count in German. Eins, zwei, drei. Then came the numbers. If Lincolnshire Poacher feels like a polite government office doing something creepy after hours, Swedish Rhapsody feels like finding an old toy in an abandoned house and realizing it's still playing. Again, if you want to hear it, search for Swedish Rhapsody number stations. The audio quality is rough, the voice is strange, and the whole thing feels like something that should not have been broadcast across the planet. But it was. And that's part of the appeal of this rabbit hole. Number stations feel like accidental evidence of a hidden world. Most of us go through our lives thinking the air around us is empty, but it isn't. It's full of signals. It's radio, television, cellular, satellite, emergency services, aircraft, ships, military communication, amateur radio, and mixed into that enormous invisible ocean for decades were these strange voices recording numbers to unknown listeners. It makes the world feel a little bit bigger and a little less settled. Now let's talk about one that may be even stranger. UVB76, better known as the Buzzer. This one is not quite the same as the classic voice reading number station, but it belongs in the same strange neighborhood. The Buzzer is a Russian shortwave station that broadcasts on 4625 kHz. Most of the time, it is exactly what the nickname suggests. It buzzes. Over and over. A short, monotonous buzzing tone. All day, all night, for years. And then, every once in a while, the buzzing stops. A voice comes on, usually speaking Russian. It reads a short message, and then the buzzer starts again. That's it. No public explanation, no friendly station ID, no thanks for listening, just buzz, buzz, buzz. Then suddenly a voice, then buzz, buzz, buzz again. Now this has inspired all kinds of theories. Some people think it's a military communications channel marker, basically a way to keep a frequency occupied and ready. Some think it's connected to Russian military networks. Others have suggested more dramatic ideas. Emergency communications, dead hand systems, doomsday theories, and all the usual fun stuff that makes sleeping difficult. The more grounded explanation is probably that it's some type of military communications system. But again, probably military communications system is not exactly relaxing. The Buzzer is especially fascinating because unlike some older number stations that have gone silent, UVB76 has continued to attract attention from listeners. People monitor it, record it, discuss it, analyze voice messages, compare changes in the signal, It has also become like a living radio mystery, a station that people can still tune into and say, yep, still buzzing. There's something deeply weird about that, because most mysteries are frozen in time. A strange event happens, then we study it afterward. But the buzzer feels ongoing. It's like the machine is still running somewhere, still waiting, still transmitting. And that brings us to one of the most important questions. Why use radio at all? Why not use encrypted emails? Why not use phones? Why not use a modern app? The answer is partly simplicity. A shortwave radio receiver is cheap. It doesn't need to transmit anything. That's important. If you're a spy and you transmit a message, someone might locate you. But if you only receive, you're much harder to catch. A number station is one-way communication. The transmitter sends the message to everyone, but only the intended recipient can understand it. To everyone else, it's nonsense. That's a powerful setup. There's also plausible deniability. Having a shortwave radio is not inherently suspicious. People collect radios, people listen to foreign broadcasts, people are hobbyists, people are just weird. I say that lovingly, as someone starting a podcast about mysterious radio numbers. But if someone catches you with a specialized spy device, that's a problem. If someone catches you with radio, that's easier to explain. And if the message is properly encrypted, the numbers you wrote down may look like meaningless junk. Without the key, they're just digits. That's the brilliance of the system. Low tech, hard to trace. Easy to receive. Almost impossible to decode without the pad. And completely eerie to anyone whose number stumbles across it by accident. Now, one of the strongest pieces of evidence that number stations really were used for espionage comes from spy cases involving Cuba. In multiple cases, prosecutors described agents receiving instructions through encrypted shortwave broadcasts. One well-known example is Ana Montes, a former U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency analyst who was convicted of spying for Cuba. According to reporting in court-related accounts, she received coded messages through shortwave transmissions and decoded them using one-time pads. That detail matters because it moves number stations out of the realm of pure folklore. This isn't just radio people heard weird stuff. They are real espionage cases where shortwave coded messages show up as part of the story. And once you know that, the creepy broadcasts feel different. You stop hearing them as random oddities, you start hearing them as infrastructure. A hidden communication system built into the atmosphere. Another Cuban-associated station is known as HM01. HM01 is interesting because it combines spoken numbers with digital data. Instead of just a voice recording numbers groups, HM01 broadcasts a female voice reading numbers, followed by digital tones that sound a little like a computer having a bad evening. This is where number stations evolve from Cold War spy radio weirdness into something that feels more modern. Still strange, still anonymous, still broadcast over shortwave, but now with digital file transfer mixed in. If the old number stations sound like ghostly voices from the Cold War, HM01 sounds like the Cold War found a modem and said, let's make this worse. Slightly worse, professionally worse, government grade worse. Again, if you want to hear examples, search HM01 Cuban number station. The sound is not as classically creepy as Swedish Rhapsody, but it may be more unsettling because it feels functional. It sounds like something doing a job, and that job was none of our business, which naturally makes us want to know everything about it. So why are number stations so creepy? I think there are a few reasons. First, they're impersonal. A voice reading numbers with no emotion creates a strange distance. There's no conversation, no explanation, no humanity, just information. Second, they're public and private at the same time. Anyone can hear them. Almost nobody can understand them. And that combination does something weird to your brain. It's like finding a locked box sitting in the middle of the road. The box is not hidden, but whatever inside it is. Third, they imply a listener. That may be the creepiest part. A number station is not just broadcasting into nothing. It exists because someone, somewhere, is supposed to be listening. You don't know who, you don't know where, you don't even know what the message says. But the format itself tells you there is an intended recipient. Somewhere out there, a person may have been sitting alone with a radio, writing down those numbers, knowing exactly what they meant. That is a fantastic setup for paranoia. Healthy paranoia, of course. the educational kind. Then there's also the timing. A lot of number station cultures grew during the Cold War, when the world already felt like it was balanced on a wire. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked into a global struggle. Espionage was everywhere. Governments were watching each other. Agents were being planted. Secrets were moving through embassies, dead drops, coded messages, and quiet meetings in public places. Number stations fit perfectly into that world. They feel like the soundtrack of the Cold War's hidden layer. Not the speeches, not the news broadcasts, not the history book version, but the privacy machinery underneath it all. The part ordinary people were never supposed to understand. And yet ordinary people found them. That's another fascinating part. Shortwave listeners, hobbyists, radio enthusiasts, insomniacs with good antennas began discovering, recording, cataloging, and naming these stations. They gave them nicknames, they compared schedules, they tracked frequencies, they built communities around the mystery. In a weird way, number stations became a kind of accidental public archive of secret communication. Nobody officially invited the hobbyists, but the signals were out there. And if you broadcast into the open air, people are going to listen. That's one of my favorite things about this entire subject. The governments, agencies, or militaries behind these stations may have intended them for a tiny audience, but the rest of the world could still hear the door creaking open, even if we couldn't see inside. Now, not every strange radio transmission is a spy station. That's important. This rabbit hole can get messy. Some mod broadcasts are military, some are test signals, some are amateur experiments, some are utility stations, some are hoaxes, and some are just misidentified. Some are probably just boring technical stuff that sounds creepy because it's 1:30 in the morning and humans are fragile little anxiety machines. But many number stations were consistent, scheduled, structured, repeated. They followed formats. They had identifiers, they had message lengths, they had sign-offs. That level of organization suggests purpose. Random weirdness is one thing. A station broadcasting structured coded groups on a schedule for years is another. That's not somebody accidentally learning on a microphone. That's a system. And systems are designed for something. There's also an interesting psychological effect here. Number stations are scary because they don't explain themselves. Modern life explains too much. Every app has a tutorial. Every product has a label. Every video has a thumbnail with someone pointing in a red circle. Number stations offer none of that. They don't care whether you understand. They don't care whether you're listening. They don't care whether you're creeped out. They simply transmit. And there's something almost old world about that. Like a lighthouse, or a church bell, or a train whistle at night. Except instead of guiding ships or marking time, it might be telling an intelligence asset to go pick up a package in a city you've never heard of. Romantic? Maybe. Unsettling? Absolutely. So where are number stations now? That depends on who you ask. Many of the famous Cold War era stations are gone. The Lincolnshire Poacher stopped broadcasting in 2008. Others vanished after political changes, intelligence restructuring, or advances in technology. But number stations as a category have not entirely disappeared. Some strange stations are still monitored. Some military-style shortwave communications continue. HN01 is being documented in recent years. UVB76 continues to be watched obsessively by radio enthusiasts. And there's a strong argument that shortwave still has value, because modern communication systems are powerful, but they're also vulnerable. Internet infrastructure can be monitored. Satellites can be tracked or disrupted. Phones can be compromised. Apps leave metadata. And a one-way radio broadcast? That's stubbornly old-fashioned. And old-fashioned tools sometimes survive because they work. A paper map still works when GPS doesn't. A hand-crank radio still works when the power is out. A shortwave broadcast can still cross borders without asking permission from the cell tower. There's something to be said for that. The past has a way of hanging around when it's useful. Now, I want to make a distinction here. It's easy for a topic like number stations to slide into full conspiracy mode. And to be fair, some of the theories are entertaining. Sleeper agents waiting for activation, doomsday commands, secret military orders, unknown stations sending instructions to people living ordinary lives. And sure, some of that is probably exaggerated. Some of it is internet storytelling. Some of it is people wanting the mystery to be bigger than it is. But the core reality is already fascinating enough. You don't need aliens. You don't need ghosts. You don't need a shadow government controlling vending machines through AM radio. The confirmed and highly plausible version is already strange. For decades, voices on shortwave radio broadcast coded messages across the world, likely to intelligence teams, using systems designed so that anyone could hear them, but almost nobody could read them. And that's enough. That's the story. And it's incredible. If you want to experience this rabbit hole for yourself, there are a few good places to start. Search for Lincolnshire Poacher number stations, Swedish Rhapsody number station, UVB76 The Buzzer, HM01 Cuban number station, all the ones we've gotten over in this episode. You can also look up the Connet Project, which is a well-known collection of number station recordings. Just know that once you hear some of these, they tend to stick in your head, especially Swedish Rhapsody. That one sounds like it crawled out of a haunted toy chest with government clearance. Again, lightly haunted, we're keeping it cozy. So what do you think? I think number stations are one of those rare mysteries where the likely explanation is both rational and deeply compelling. Do I think every strange broadcast is a spy message? No. Do I think some of them were? Absolutely. The history, the patterns, the court cases, the monitoring communities, and the technological logic all point in that direction. And that's what makes the subject so perfect for this show. Number stations sit right at the edge of fact and mystery. They are real, they are documented, they are explainable. But they still feel like something you were not supposed to hear. And that's the magic of them. They remind us that the world still has hidden layers, even now, even with all of our technology, even with everything mapped, archived, uploaded, tagged, and searchable. There are still signals moving through the dark, some harmless, some official, some forgotten, some maybe still waiting for the right listener. Well, that's all for tonight. Thanks for spending a little time with me here at Dead Signal Podcast. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, follow along for more strange stories, legends, and late night rabbit holes. Until next time, stay curious. And if you hear static, maybe listen a little closer.